Hello and welcome to the Criticaleye Asia podcast, inspiring leaders to succeed. These podcasts engage on subjects at the forefront of business leaders' minds, always topical, thought-provoking, and enabling you to learn from leaders and peers delivering amazing results, unpacking leadership and making it bite-sizable. We're here today to explore stepping up. To examine this subject, I'm very fortunate to be with Pascal De Petrini, board mentor here at Criticaleye, who will give a brief intro to himself. Pascal, over to you.
Thank you, Charlie. So I'm Pascal De Petrini. I'm French. I spent my entire career, professional career, in the food industry, working during the last 25 years in Asia, having occupied positions throughout the organization to the role of CEO for a regional company here in Singapore. I'm now retired from the corporate world and enjoying a portfolio of activities here in Asia.
Pascal, and what we can explore with you is stepping up into a regional leader in APAC. If you can share with us some of the insights in terms of what you found worked best and perhaps on reflection what you might have done differently.
Thanks for the question. I mean, that's a very relevant one. I've occupied in my life, I think, 3 regional positions, and the most insightful, obviously, is the first one, because this is the position where you realize that, in my case, for example, I was probably a little bit over-optimistic when I took the position. I thought, first, I was extremely happy. It's always good. This is something you aspire to. The second point is I thought I would kind of know, because I had a boss who was regional, and I observed him, and I would had some positives, things that I would continue doing, and some things which I would wanted to change. So then the second question, when you get to regional position, is also multiple countries, and I thought I was prepared because I moved in the same organization, so probably that simplifies your life, and I thought I knew the other countries because we had regional meetings, and I was so happy, and it went so fast that I jumped into the position. And when I jumped into the position, I quickly realized that that was not that simple. First realization, obvious, multiple stakeholders, throughout the organization, but also external stakeholders. I realized that the ambition that I had, so that I could implement my vision of business development, my vision of leadership style and people development. But then, what you realize is also there are a huge number of things that are quickly overwhelming you. You get to understand, what is your boss's expectation, what are the global team's expectation, and you have to understand better the countries, and the reality is that you have to go there, so you have to spend a lot of time going there. You have to deliver the results simply because that's why you have been appointed, and you have to follow the flow of the budget cycle, the strat plan cycle, the reporting cycle, and everything. And this is everywhere. And you have to manage your team, and you have to step up to your leadership role and be recognized as the leader of this organization. So that that's a lot of things to absorb from the very beginning.
Did you find, Pascal, that naivety worked for you, if one can call it naivety? And did you therefore, in the second undertaking of this role, make it a more formal approach?
So what I realized, obviously, is if you are not prepared, first it has consequences. The first consequence is that you have to become more realistic, or become more pragmatic, or operationally better equipped. So you start focusing on identifying and focusing on priorities, clear priorities that are going to make a difference for the organization, for the team, for the business, and for yourself at the end of the day. I think there is another dimension which is important, which is it's a bit destabilizing as a leader, and you come to the point where you question yourself on, am I obviously it's the imposter syndrome to a certain extent. You know, am I ready for that? Or should I change the way I'm managing, especially engaging with people? And to cut it short, I mean, I came to the conclusion that I would never be as good as being myself. So I decided not to change the way I was engaging with people, managing with people. But I appreciated the interest of having in my team people who would give me honest feedback, who would recognize and support me when I was doing well, but also alert me when I was not doing that well. And this is priceless. So to answer to your question, yes, when you prepare for the second role, obviously it's easier, it goes faster, but you know also that you have to create some specific situations where you have in your team, for example, somebody or some people who are going to be very transparent with you, with obviously a kind of positive and constructive mindset, but that is going to be a reference for you to progress. Where do I do well and where I should progress?
I suppose the question has got to be, Pascal, on the third occasion, therefore, did you perfect the art of being a regional leader?
So actually, probably there is nothing like perfection in that case. And it was a very different situation where I moved to a different organization. So I had also to learn the culture. And in that case, I mean, what comes out as one of the learnings for me is that you need to be agile, adaptable. And that's certainly a learning also, which is there is no playbook and there is a lot of agility and adaptability on your side.
Pascal, one of the things you referred to is the stakeholders, the people that when you step up to, previously some of them were your peers, but then there's a new team that you have. I know you've got a very clear insight in terms of some of the pros and cons of managing that. Delighted for you to share with us some of your thoughts when stepping up.
Yeah, I mean, the aspect of people is obviously the most important, and certainly in this move to regional position is certainly very critical and difficult to manage because in some cases you become the boss of your former peers, same level in the organization. Not all of them are going to observe you in a sense and assess if you are legitimate in your position. The second I mentioned, there is another public, which is obviously the team, your regional team. In my case, I had quite a solid regional team because the organization was quite decentralized. And these two publics, they have different type of expectations, requirements, and you have to manage them in different ways. At least this is what I learned. Obviously my style is more engaging, and my style is more trying to empower people and to become a coach more than anything else. And in such a situation, you will probably have people trying to leverage that, kind of because either they consider that they could have been in your position, or they have their own vision of how things should be done, and they are not listening too much. So in these cases, you have to probably have these kind of tough conversations to align with these people. And if you ask me, and if you push me to the limit, in some cases you get to the point where you have to just agree to disagree, or to even kind of let them go. There is in big organizations like my organization, there is very often a kind of political dimension in that situation. So at high level, a country head would have some sponsors or would have some good connections centrally, and some of them potentially could use that to their advantage. Not always in a very transparent manner. And that challenged me, to be frank. I asked myself, how should I deal with that? My conclusion has always been, probably I have to leverage the same, but do it in a fully transparent way. So, stating the facts, stating the actions I had engaged to ensure good alignment and cooperation. And at the end of the day, asking for, kind of a very clear-cut decision from the top of the organization. To the point that once in one of the organization, I was the one going, because I had a kind of arbitration that was against my views and proposal.
Fascinating. Two questions, if I might, that provokes. One is, were you surprised how political it was and how much time it took up? And secondly, that transparency, when you look back at it, was that something that was the right thing to do?
So on the transparency, no regret. I think you are who you are. So you have to be true to yourself. So that I could not do otherwise. The reality of political, it can go very far. I mean, the case I described, I had people working very hard to kind of get rid of me. So it's very specific. I wouldn't, build on that. But in other cases, yes, I mean, the political dimension has also some benefits in a sense, because that brings you some challenge, some new perspectives, and I'm the kind of person who would listen to this new perspective and try to make the best out of them. But at the end of the day, still the question is we need to come to a kind of joint agreement with the people and the team and to align on something.
Was there any time that you thought the politics was with a bigger P and perhaps the customer was lost in that equation? Or was that something that the customer did benefit by?
In reality, it never went that far. Probably because we had this, kind of direct conversations I was talking about, and frank conversations, and this transparent way to engage with the sponsors of the person, for example, who was challenging in the process. So I think there was no collateral damage on the customer side in that case.
I think there's an interesting reference that you're making, perhaps more of an undertone, that refers to, Pascal, belief and self-awareness of the culture that you're working within. How far do you believe you can bend, if one can use that word, towards the unwritten, the undefined culture of the organisation? And how important is your voice within that process, and indeed being heard, or finding that suddenly you no longer are being heard?
Indeed, that's a very interesting question. So I was lucky in my life to work for many years with the same organization, which had a very strong culture. But working many years with the same organization, you are the culture. You shape the culture. You breathe the culture of the organization. So the easy part, I have to say, is to be the custodian of this culture, and the less easy part is to manage your emotions when somebody is not behaving in line with the culture. And so I've always tried to do two things. One is to clearly, ensure that we would have a clarity on the culture, as much as you can have clarity on culture in a sense. So explain it through behaviors that you favor in the organization, just to ensure that we have the same set of reference. And second, try to remain open to kind of other perspectives, while trying to define what is the limit. Where does it become something that is not acceptable for the organization, and so openness and firmness to a certain extent is a mix that I've always tried to kind of stick to.
I suppose where you come across this is operating relatively remotely. So APAC is a region, a significant region that you found yourself being responsible for. It's got to set its own defining culture, but it's got to be consistent with the whole organisation's culture. So how do you navigate being consistent, but also that global versus local, and being true to your customers, which will be different in this region?
So that could take us very far, in a sense. How do you define purpose and culture? What is the reference, ultimate reference that you should have? Well, part of the answer is obviously, if you have a purpose, it's the purpose of the global organization, and then you have different ways to kind of implement that or live that in the different countries. I didn't find that too difficult, also because I lived in an organization that was expanding, and we were projecting the custodians of the culture. And this is a culture which is very open, very At one point, our CEO used to say at that time that, the culture of our organization was the ability to absorb and blend with other cultures, so which shows the agility and the adaptability that we were talking before. In the middle of that, you need to have some very strong core beliefs that you want to stick to, but they are, the kind of that part is not too difficult, simply because they speak to. Usually they speak to everybody, and if you have somebody who is not in line with that, I would encourage people just to leave the organization, to be frank, because I think it is dangerous to have people who stay with an organization when they don't believe in the core values of it.
Do you think there's a tenure to that custodianship that you had? Did you realize there was a time when you needed to step away, or where you weren't consistent with what the future perhaps needed, do you think?
I ask myself the question quite often. First, as a discipline, to ensure that I would not miss something. The second, simply because, yes, you see changes, you see evolution in the organization, and you just want to make sure that you are not living in the past, but you are living in the future. A big advantage of being a Westerner living in Asia is that you have this kind of culture shock, and you are challenged in your way, in your adaptability to different perspectives and everything. And I spent my first 2 years of expatriation in China, and that was a big cultural gap, and that was a massive learning for me, in a sense that this is where I managed to get to the essence of what I thought was critical to keep as a culture, and also what could be accepted in terms of different ways to look at it.
In stepping up into this role, how far do you believe, Pascal, that you can bring your personality? How important is the belief that you have? How important is the self-awareness of what that actually is and what that might achieve? And also, how regularly can you check in to ensure it's consistent with what the organisation requires? Self-awareness. That's
a big word, and at the same time, it's a word that you need to be prepared and to ask yourself that kind of questions. How far can you bring your personality into your job? My personal answer is as far as you can. You should go as far as you can, in a sense that authenticity is certainly something which is very important for the people to around you, to ensure that you engage actively and positively with them. However, the question is, you have to be aware of the consequences of that, the impact of that, the fact that you will have to go through probably a process of discovery with some people who don't know you, that might surprise them. So always about transparency, always about proactively engaging with these people, being clear, and then you will, as an answer, probably receive some challenges in some cases. So together with self-awareness, there is certainly something in which I call self-confidence that has to come. Humble self-confidence, in a sense, because you might be, again, challenged. I wouldn't do it like that, or why is it that you are doing like that, or it's not the right way to do it, although it's your personality. So you have to be convinced that at the end of the day, you know where you go, and you know that this can take the team together with you.
In that process, how much do you divulge to the team around you? Because effectively you are exposing yourself. That therefore means that there are insecurities that you might wish to or not wish to share. But also, as a leader, they're expecting leadership. They have confidence and a direction. So it's a very delicate balance that when you step into that role, you've got to achieve. To some extent, it's assertion. To some extent, it's an openness. As you've stepped up, how were you able to get that balance right?
I don't know if I got it right, actually. I tried my best. Yeah, to balance all these dimensions is probably the art of leadership. So again, things which are important are, foundations like I know who I am. Foundations like I'm transparent and I assume the transparency. Foundations like I invite feedback And I know I can identify people who will give me a genuine feedback, something which is based on, I really recognize that you are good there, and I really acknowledge the fact that I should do better in other dimensions. So it's the dynamics of the process more than having a kind of firm view of the balance is there, the percentage should be that much on this aspect and that much on this aspect. So it's the dynamic of engaging with the people around you that makes a difference ultimately.
I imagine it's an iterative process. So you got to take people along a journey. Was it also a conscious process that you would need to ensure that assumptions weren't made and therefore you would check in every so often? Was there a way or an approach that would mean you would make quite sure certain things were gone through at certain times to refresh?
I think you have to acknowledge that you are always observed, that there is nothing that is going to be hidden. And as soon as you have acknowledged that, you have to either you fake it, but it's very difficult to be consistently faking it, or you have to be yourself. And again, you have to sit with two very solid pillars, which is I'm self-aware, I know where I am, I'm self-confident, I know what I know and what I can do, and I've not had any other magic wand to solve the issue that you are describing.
Pascal, we must wrap this up, and I'm sure we will take this dialogue further into the Criticaleye community. You frequently engage, you mentor people to be able to lift them up, to be able them to feel comfortable with what they're having to tackle. Just to say, a real pleasure to catch up with you and to go through this fascinating subject of stepping up. Thank you so very much indeed.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for giving me once again the opportunity to share my experience for what it is. I've always been focusing on helping people to grow, and hopefully, by doing this podcast, I continue the journey on helping people to grow.
Indeed you do. Thank you so very much indeed, Pascal.
Thank you, Charlie.